All right. Hello, everyone. Once again, to this series on best practices for property management companies that are looking to scale. Here we are once again with Eduardo Mandri, the co founder and CEO of Angel Host. And based on his experience starting multiple companies and scaling multiple companies, as well as scaling Angel Host from zero to more than 1,000 properties that we work with right now. We're going to be hopefully bringing some value. And today we're going to talk about technology, building a tech stack. What are all of those pieces of the puzzle that need to be put in place? So Eduardo, why don't we start by you telling us a little bit about when you first were thinking of starting Angel Host
Mhm.
and you were sitting down with your partner. what
Yes,
what
thank
what was the
you.
thought process? What was the thought process of saying, hey, like you could have said, let's build some of our technology and let's go and raise funds and just develop it ourselves. What was the thought process behind saying, you know what, let's not do that right away. Let's go on and actually find what's already out there, and let's just sort of put those pieces of the puzzle together first, and then we'll see if anything needs to be developed in house.
That's exactly it, Sebastian. And we knew, we actually had a lot of pressure from our investors to become a pure technology company, right? So there's always that pressure to say, hey, let's develop our own technology. But given my experiences with the other companies that I had started, where I had built part of their technology, was I knew just how much time and effort and resources go into developing any piece of technology, no matter how big or how small. So we decided to instead do a lot of research on what were the tools already in the market, and understand which one was the best, which one was the one that did exactly what we needed to do. And sometimes what property managers fail to realize is just how time intensive just going through all the different tools out there in the market, understanding them, and then of course implementing them, right? I think, which is one of the hardest parts. So we knew that there was so many steps from choosing technology, implementing it, and then mastering the technology, that we didn't want to delay the project by having to build our own technology from left to right. We decided then to choose the technologies that already existed and then build on top of those the layers on things that we knew were missing or that could make our work better, right? So that's how essentially that was the thought process, and it worked out quite well because our time to market was considerably reduced by us using, readily available tools out there, and thus focusing on growing the business and building our own tech stack for the things that we're actually missing.
Hmm. And you mentioned an important concept there, which is the time to market.
Mhm.
Why is that important when you're starting a business, and how
Yeah.
does sort of using existing technology allow you to make that time to market shorter?
Well, like any company, any business opportunity out there, there's the ability to execute the idea, but there's also the timing, right? There's a moment in time when your product or your service is needed. There's so every day that you're not out there in the market, you're losing a potential client, or you're increasing the risk of another competitor coming in and doing what you have in mind. And the same applies for property management companies. In fact, if they're not quick to market, and let's say one of your competitors is wowing a potential owner with a beautiful owner's dashboard, showing them, showcasing their sales and their reservations and their reviews, and you come to see them and you don't have that, well, there's a chance that you're going to lose that client to that competitor. So you have to be as well equipped as quickly as possible to maximize your chances of capturing as much of the market as possible. And that's part of the idea also behind Angel Host. We took the time to research all of those technologies, and most importantly to master those technologies, right? And we'll talk about that a bit later perhaps, so that we can allow our clients, the property management companies that we work with, to get to market faster, to be able to grow faster, right? But it's undeniable that technology is a must. We have to use technology, any property manager out there that is not heavily using technology is probably falling behind, right? In all aspects of business.
Absolutely. Now I'm gonna add this slide here on the screen because it helps us see and understand when we're talking about building a tech stack, what is it that we mean, right? We mean all of these pieces of the puzzle, and each one of them represents a technology category. I'd like us to tackle them one by one, Eduardo, starting with the PMS, right, which is the central component of any tech stack. When you were thinking about, finding a PMS, what were some of the considerations that you had to think about, especially given the plans for scale that you had in mind? How did you sort of go about the fact that you were starting out, so the budget was limited in a way, but at the same time you cannot find the cheapest tool and just outgrow it 2 months after having started using it.
Yeah, it's a good point, Sebastian. In fact, but let me just start by something that might caught people's eye, which is the use of those airplane icons, right? And like we say many times, it's not just a question of choosing the right technology. The technology is like buying a private plane, right? You can buy, depending on your needs, you can buy a Gulfstream if you're looking to cross the Atlantic Ocean every week, or maybe a smaller private jet if you're flying between smaller cities. But at the end of the day, whatever number of private jets you have, you're going to need a crew to pilot the plane and to take care of it, right? So buying some of these technologies, whether it's a PMS or anything else, we make the analogies like you can get as many planes as you want, and you're going to build an airline, but if you don't have the pilots, it's pretty much worthless. And that's an error that we see a lot of property managers doing, which is they get all of these great pieces of technology, but they don't realize just how much time it takes to actually implement them, train on them, and optimize their use. And you're correct. One of the centerpieces of the tech stack of any property manager is what we have in the upper left, which is the PMS, right? The property management system, which essentially is going to help you connect to the different channels so that you don't have to be answering to questions on Airbnb and then moving to VRBO and then moving to Booking.com. And if you have multiple listings, it could become a nightmare very quickly, as well as synchronizing prices and whatnot. And of course, you want to look for something that is robust, that is not too expensive, that does what you need the system to do, and that integrates with other systems. But as you can clearly see, that PMS is just one of many other technologies. This is one of the errors also that property managers tend to think, I'm just going to get a PMS and that will do everything. And while there are indeed some PMSs that are better than others because they have more functionality, the truth of the matter is that none of them can actually tackle every single element, every single aspect of what the property manager requires. Therefore, you have things like dynamic pricing, right? Most PMSs have what we call rule-based pricing. Sell a little bit higher on weekends, sell a little bit lower during weekdays, sell higher during the season, sell lower during this other season, and that's okay. It's a good first approach. I would call the 1990s approach, to pricing. But nowadays, with all information that is available out there, all the big data that is available, you can have real-time access to the supply and the demand on every single market. And if you use that data to make decisions in terms of pricing and you dynamically adapt that, it can make a big difference. And the list goes on, right? The list goes on into market intelligence. You need market dashboards. You're going to need to verify your guests, right? And so on and so forth. So there's quite a bit of pieces to cover. I think we have enough we could talk about each one of these pieces for 30 minutes each, but it gives the audience an idea of all the different services that we as Angel Hosts have to use and have to master in order to provide the service that we provide, or for the property managers to actually provide the service that they need to provide to the owners.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. One of the key considerations as it relates to market data, for example, is the way in which the tool gets that data, right? So can you tell us a little bit about the difference between source data versus scrape data, and why it
Mhm.
is important for property managers to understand that difference?
Yeah, there's a lot of information out there, like I mentioned, and there's two ways that that information can be sourced. You can either build a screen scraping solution and go and screen scrape, let's say Airbnb. You log into a listing, you do a search for what are the prices for June 1st to June 5th. And Airbnb is going to tell you, well, the price per night is $130. So a screen scraper can capture that information and say, oh, it's let's say it's $100 per night. And then that same screen scraper can come back the next day and notice that now those dates are blocked. Therefore, the screen scraper assumes that reservation must have been booked at $100 per night. Of course, might not be the case. It might be that there was just a block for maintenance, or maybe the property manager ended up giving a discount, or some other factor, right? But at least it gives you a general indication. The beauty of source data is that it's readily available. There's great companies that are downloading terabytes of data every day with this information, and it gives you an overall look of the market. However, if you want to have more precise information, if you want to know more precisely about, how much are people really selling the rooms for, you have to go into something called source data. And that's simply property managers volunteering their information to a central entity that is capturing the information, the real reservation data, from different entities that have volunteered to provide this data, and then they aggregate it. The beauty of it is that it's extremely accurate, right? You're getting the data right from the source. The disadvantage is that it's limited. This type of information is not available for every single market. And even when it's available for certain markets, the sample size might be a little bit too small. So using both data sources, the scrape data and the source data, and combining them is probably one of the best things that you can do to get a true understanding of where the market is.
Absolutely. Not to get technical, because anyways, I'm not technical, so I couldn't get technical. But when you're looking at, say, a PMS or a dynamic pricing tool, you can see the front end, right? The user experience or the UX UI piece, but there's also considerations on the back end, right? So can you tell us a little bit about how, for example, for Angel Host, it has been important to use some of those back end sort of API documentations and whatnot to build some of our own reports, and why was that even needed in the first place?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, basically, and again, not to get too technical, but you can use any piece of technology, and you can use it based on what it offers you, what you can see. But in our case, it was important to have a piece of technology that we can connect to in the back end and extract the information that we need from it, so that we can build our own reports and our own technology as well. To give you an example, the property management system that we use provides a pretty basic owner's dashboard. If you are an owner, you log into the PMS, it's going to give you more or less how much you've sold. But if you want more detail, it's just unavailable. So what we did is we are extracting from our PMS that information, but we're also extracting from our dynamic pricing system other pieces of information. We're extracting directly from Airbnb other pieces of information, and then we're building a dashboard that combines all of that information and provides the owner a very clear understanding of how much you're selling, how does that compare versus the previous year, what are the reviews like, what is the type of user that they're attracting to the property, a wealth of data that we wouldn't be able to produce in isolation. We need this data coming and flowing from different systems, from all of these different technologies and data providers that we use, and then we can centralize that in one place. So for companies like us, having that back-end connection is important. I would think that for most property managers out there, it would be an overkill to try to do things via the API unless you're in the hundreds or thousands of properties like we are, right? Otherwise, it's simply not worth it. You're better off just going with suppliers that will do that for you.
Absolutely. Now, with so many technology solutions out there, and so many of them are coming up every day, right? Very niche ones. How do you know when to stop? How do you know when you've had enough technology suppliers? And how do you differentiate what's needed and essential versus what's a nice to have?
Right, exactly. It's like going to a dealership, and what do you actually need? Do you need a car? Well, a Toyota might do, or you want an incredible driving experience of your life, and then you go for a Ferrari, right? So both of them will take you from point A to point B. Ultimately, it's also your decision what type of experience you want. At the end of the day, when it comes to choosing technologies, you have to go for what you actually really need, because every piece of technology, whether it's smart locks or whether have a pricing technology or a guest verification technology, or something to provide guests with a digital guidebook, or something to allow people to their early check-ins, or another technology that would allow you to ensure that you don't have credit card chargebacks. There's a myriad of technologies out there, and each one of them, A, will cost money, B, upfront, will cost you money on an ongoing basis, and you have to be always on top of it to understand how it evolves and how to use it. So my recommendation to small property management companies is stick to just one, two, at maximum three basic technologies that you might want to use. Let larger companies like ours, that provide the service, deal with those 12, 13, 14 different technology suppliers. Let us digest that for you and provide you the service, so that, like my ex-boss used to say, to have one throat to choke, right? You just want to have one person to go after and not have to go after 14 different technology suppliers, right? But yes, choosing the technology is a very time-consuming task, and you should only choose the ones that you actually really, really need. Otherwise, you could end up with a myriad of different things, and sometimes they don't even talk to each other, and you configure something on one and it misconfigures the other one. It could get messy pretty fast.
You are very thoughtful about adding, like we're saying here, new technologies to our tech stack. What do you know that you think maybe people miss when it comes to the financial impact that adding this additional subscriptions might have on your business? Because it's easy to see, oh, this is just going to be $5 per property per month, and say, oh, well, why not, right? But how do you sort of think through that from a numbers perspective and a business perspective?
I think at the end of the day, if let's say I'm adding an artificial intelligence tool to help our guest services team translate inquiries that come in a different language in a faster way, I'm going to first evaluate, of course, how much it costs, but also how much time it's saving us, right? Will having this piece of technology actually prevent me from having to hire yet another guest service person? And if so, how many individuals can I save from that? Or how many hours can I save from that? So it is important to do, even if it's a back of the envelope calculation, but a high level calculation on what are the savings you're going to have, or what are the potential benefits. One of the things that we like to do at Angel Host is to say, well, try to make sure that whatever you're paying us, at least part of it should be automatically paid back in terms of an increase in sales or in a reduction of your workload, right? And it has to be very, very evident for people whether it's, engaging our services or buying a technology from someone else at a certain number of dollars per license, per property, to make sure that what they're getting out of it is much more than what they're paying, what they're paying for it.
And also there's this misconception out there that perhaps a tech stack is something that you build once and then you can leave it there forever. But we know it's not the case. We're always reviewing that tech stack, analyzing each one of those technology providers and seeing whether they're still the best, maybe even renegotiating the terms. Why do you think it's important to always be questioning the viability or the need to continue working with some of these solutions, and what's sort of been the approach that Angel Host has taken to make sure that we don't just leave it there and forget that it exists?
Right. As if it wasn't enough having to choose and implement and train and stay on top of that of every tool, you also have to start understanding how each one of those tools is evolving, right? Because if things started like four independent squares, four independent circles of each one of the technologies, you just let 6 to 8 months pass by and you start realizing that this piece of technology is now doing also parts of what this other one is doing, and this one is doing part of what this other one is doing here. So all of a sudden, maybe this piece of technology that you had, you actually don't need it anymore, and you're better off just with the other three, right? Or you're realizing that because this particular tool is not evolving fast enough, and you have to complement it by adding other suppliers, you might have to renegotiate the price of this one, because it's not doing for you as much as it was doing at the beginning. Not to mention that market change, right? We have clients in certain markets that are now required to collect IDs for every single guest that is staying at the property. So great, we had a piece of technology that allowed us to collect one piece of ID. Well, now guess what? For this market, that technology just doesn't work anymore. So we have to reevaluate, can they develop this new functionality fast enough, or do we evaluate someone else that already has that functionality and maybe drop the supplier for this other one? So it's you're on the constant lookout, right? The same way that our clients are always on the lookout for what's best for them, we have to be on the lookout for what technologies best serve our interest, and that's something that every property management company should do.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Yeah, no, this is an interesting topic. Again, every time we go to one of these conferences, we see just how many providers there are out there.
More and more.
And it seems like every day there's more and more. So I think just to sort of recap here, it's helpful to know that you can go to any one of these large conferences and you can put all of those hundreds of providers into one of these buckets, and having that organization in your mind of saying, hey, what am I missing, what do I have, what do I don't have, what can I afford, is extremely helpful. One piece we didn't talk about here, just by looking at this again, is the reservation accounting and everything that has to do with financial reconciliation. I'd like to touch on this for a minute because I feel like it's one piece of the puzzle that property managers struggle with, because they get a PMS and they think that the reports as they see them in the PMS are accurate or should be accurate. What have you learned about the way in which the reports from the PMS are actually not showing the entire picture sometimes?
Yeah, indeed. I wish, that there could be a PMS that out of the box would provide, owner statements and everything in the right way. And most property managers realize the hard way that that's not how it works. And they realize the hard way when they send either too much money to the owner or too little money and they get complaints. Let me give you one of many examples, right? When someone books, let's say on Airbnb, a multi-month stay, right? Let's say you're in the short-term rental market, but it happens that someone says, hey, I would love to rent your property for 3 months. I'm going to be going down south for the winter season, and I'm renting it for 3 months. What's going to happen is that when the PMS is going to produce the report that will go into the account statement, they will say, great, you rented this property for 3 months, $3,000 a month, that's $9,000. And that's your reservation. And it's going to, break down the taxes and the cleaning fees and any other ancillary services. So far, so good. The problem is that Airbnb does not deposit the $9,000 upfront for you. Airbnb breaks that payment in three, right? And it's going to give you $3,000 every month. So when you send out the account statement to your owner, you're going to be reporting $9,000, yet you have only received $3,000 in your bank account. And if you don't notice that, you're going to end up sending the money to the owner, and you're going to be operating now in the red because you had to put some of your own funds. What makes matters even worse is that that long-term stay for 3 months might decide to leave the property for whatever reason after a month and a half and cancel the rest of the reservation, for which Airbnb is going to take part of the money back. But guess what? You already paid the owner. So there's many examples like this where there's a disconnect between the amount of money that Airbnb is actually sending you and the amount of money that the PMS is reporting. And the other way around, if you just want to base yourself on the Airbnb data that the Airbnb provides, sometimes Airbnb is going to send you a deposit of $27,000, and that bundles in 27 different reservations. So how do you realize which one is which? And it's a little bit hard to reconcile. So we do most of that work for our owners. And we also suggest, some special technologies to produce owner statements. There's some really amazing solutions out there. But yeah, it is something that takes a lot of time from our team. But when we provide the reports to our owners, or to the property management companies that we work with, we already provide those reports already digested and cleaned up. And it takes, I'm not exaggerating, it takes hundreds of hours to do these reports. But the end result is something that is very accurate and very exact so that the owner ends up getting the right information.
Absolutely. And I cannot finish this module where we're talking about technology and tech stacks without covering your thoughts on artificial intelligence, which is the hot topic everyone's talking about. What are some of the use cases that you see AI being used for in the vacation rental management world?
Right. We've actually been using artificial intelligence quite extensively. And I like to point out the using and not abusing in artificial intelligence. And what do I mean by that? We have to understand that these large language models, these artificial intelligence models, they're very good at doing things like summarizing information, right? They might not be excellent at telling you what is the ideal response you can provide to a client. They can certainly suggest a response, but they're not going to be perfect. So specific use cases that we have used artificial intelligence for, take reviews, for example. We like to download the list of all the reviews that we obtain, let's say in a month, and put that information into the AI tool and request the AI tool, could you please summarize what the top 5 things that guests are complaining about, or what are the top 5 things that people appreciate? And could you please extract some quotes? Why is that useful? Because we can then provide a report, a very comprehensive report for our clients saying, this is a summary of all the things that you have to improve in your properties, or these are the elements that people are complaining about, and how many times each one of those elements was mentioned, right? So it's very useful. Rather than having to read 27 pages, you can then get a very concise summary. Why is it good to get the positives? Because understanding what people value about your property can help you tweak your listing, right? So that rather than your title just being, home with a pool, maybe what people appreciate the most is that it's a family-friendly community, right? So maybe you should change your title for, a family-friendly 3-bedroom luxury villa or something, right? Or it could be that everybody appreciates so much the jacuzzi because you're one of the few properties in the area that has one, and they've been mentioning this in the review. So maybe you want to include the word jacuzzi somewhere, or maybe make your second or your first important picture based on what people are actually looking for. So artificial intelligence helps us save the time in having to summarize that information, and so that we can jump right into the actions. What do we need to do? What can we change? What action do we need to take to improve our operations? And that has been extremely, extremely useful, a very good use of artificial intelligence.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, listen, Eduardo, I think this has been great. Any final thoughts on the topic of building a tech stack and dealing with all of those suppliers that exist out there?
I think the key takeaway is remember, number one, technology is a must. Absolutely. You cannot run your company without technology. Number two, take the time to evaluate which pieces of technology do you actually need. Number three, when considering the technologies, remember, it's not just about evaluating them or buying them. It's about the time you have to spend understanding them and mastering those tools. There's no purpose in having an airplane if you can't fly it, right? So it's the same with technologies. There's no purpose in having a piece of technology if you cannot extract the most value out of it. And don't forget, sometimes extracting the most value out of it is going to be one of the most time-consuming aspects of that piece of technology, right? And number four, constantly reevaluate what you have. Not because you started working with a certain PMS or a pricing system 3 years ago, it means that it's still the right solution for you. So you have to constantly, take a pause along the way, analyze your tech stack, and decide if that's what you need. And to do a shameless plug, of course, if you don't have the time to do all of this, we've actually taken the time to understand how all these technologies work and also add them with our own technology to get the best results. So, but whether you work with AngelHost or you're doing this by yourself, it's certainly something that technology is a must, and you have to invest time and resources in getting it right.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eduardo, for your time. And stay tuned for our next session where we're going to be talking about revenue management best practices.
Looking forward to that one. Thank you, Sebastian.
Bye-bye.